Welcome to the monthly meeting of the Unholy Trinity. I, the Anti-Father, President of this here council, call this meeting to order. Presiding is myself as head, of course, the Anti-Son as Vice Chair, and last but probably least, the Anti-Spirit as our Secretary. Our meeting is commenced. Anti-Spirit, would you begin by telling us the evil and heinous things that you have done this past month?
Thank you, Anti-Father, and what a privilege it is to always serve you.
Oh, brother.
I believe I have done a fantastic job in tempting people with evil and deceiving them into worshiping you, oh great one. So much so, our numbers are up 14%.
That is pathetic.
Sir?
You should be doing better. We shouldn't be up by 14%. We should be at 100. If we're growing, it means that we don't have total control over this measly human population, and that is unacceptable. Get with the program, or I will find someone else to do your job better.
I'm sorry, sir.
Shut it. Anti-Son, what have you done? Are you sleeping? What have you done this past month?
Same old, same old. What I always do.
Do you have some attitude you want to express, boy?
I just don't get the point of doing these meetings every month. What do? I don't do anything new. A few signs, a few miracles, most of the world worships me, I kill those who don't. In a few months, everyone's gonna be on our side, so what's the big deal?
What's the big deal? Don't forget who put you where you are.
Oh yes, you remind me every day. I'm just a maggot without you. Oh, please. If I was in control, we would have accomplished our goal already.
Show some respect.
Shut it, Anti-Spirit. You're failing as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he don't care about you.
And you. I gave you your power, your strength, the ability to do miracles. I even gave you the deception to deceive the world. But you have become so proud and arrogant because the world worships you, but don't forget that it's actually worshiping me. You are nothing but a pathetic human that would have died in the streets. So before you start questioning me, remember your place. It is not I who need you, but you who need me. So get your act together, get the job done, or I will kill you myself. So hard to find useful beings these days.
Wow, so temperamental.
You think you'd at least care if we were unified? One common goal, right?
One common goal.
Before we get into the video, I would greatly appreciate it if you would subscribe to the channel. We've got a lot of content that's been coming out lately, and I know that you can benefit from it. What is the Unholy Trinity? It isn't a term that we see in the Bible. At the same time, we don't see the word Trinity in the Bible either. These are terms that we use to describe a biblical concept, and so it's not an issue to use these terms. Far too often, people will argue against biblical concepts, saying things like, that word isn't used in the Bible, so it's wrong. Their argument is a fallacy, but that's on the side. Back to the question though, what is the Unholy Trinity? It's also known as the Counterfeit Trinity, the False Trinity, and the Anti-Trinity. In essence, it describes a group of three evil beings, presenting themselves as if they were God by mimicking him in certain ways. These three try to draw worship unto themselves by doing miracles and having power that appears to be from God or of God himself. In essence, the Unholy Trinity is one acting like the Anti-Father, one acting like the Anti-Son, and one acting like the Anti-Spirit. Who are these people? It's Satan, the Antichrist, and the false prophet. We get this concept primarily from Revelation 12 and 13, which vividly describes those characters, but not by those names. I've already done a video on each of them, which you can find those videos in the description. In short, the dragon is Satan, the first beast is the Antichrist, and the second beast is the false prophet. The dragon, Satan, acts like the Anti-Father. Number one, all praise ultimately goes to him. We read in Revelation 13 that people are worshiping the beast, but this praise more so goes to Satan, as it says, and they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast, and they worship the beast, saying, who is like the beast and who can fight against it? Yes, they are worshiping the Antichrist, the beast, but Satan is the one who is empowering him, so really it's Satan who is being worshipped. This is mimicking the Father and the Son. Jesus says in John 7:18, the one who speaks on his own authority seeks his own glory. But the one who seeks the glory of him who sent him is true, and in him there is no falsehood. Paul speaks of the end of time in this way. When all things are subjected to him, then the Son himself will also be subjected to him who put all things in subjection under him, that God may be all in all. These two verses give us the picture that the Father is the one being given glory for sending the Son, and that the Son will give glory to the Father at the end of time. Satan mimics this with the Antichrist. There's also something else here in this verse in Revelation 13, which leads us to point number 2. Satan empowers the Antichrist and gives him authority. We read in Revelation 13:4, and they worship the dragon, for he had given his authority to the beast. Paul states it in this way: the coming of the lawless one is by the activity of Satan, with all power and false signs and wonders. So the Antichrist is empowered and working not by his own authority, but by Satan. This is a counterfeit of the true God, in which Jesus says, I can do nothing on my own. As I hear, I judge, and my judgment is just, because I seek not my own will, but the will of him who sent me. And again, when you have lifted up the Son of Man, then you will know that I am he, and that I do nothing of my own authority, but speak just as the Father taught me. And he who sent me is with me. He has not left me alone, for I always do the things that are pleasing to him. Jesus was sent by the Father and did the Father's will, not his own. His authority came from the Father and not just of himself. Satan and the Antichrist will try and do the same thing, which leads us into our next point. 3. Satan sends the Antichrist. We get this from the end of Revelation 12 and the beginning of Revelation 13, which says, and he stood on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast rising out of the sea. This gives us the impression that it is Satan who is drawing him out. Now, I would argue that chapter 13 takes place primarily during the latter 3.5 years of the tribulation because of 12:14-17 and 13:5. After Satan's failure to destroy Israel in the first half, the Antichrist will take a far more direct approach during the second half. The point is, we get the imagery of Satan sending the Antichrist. This, of course, parodies the Father sending Jesus. And the Father who sent me has himself borne witness about me. So these are just a few ways that Satan parodies the Father as the Anti-Father. At the same time, these 3 ways also speak about how the Antichrist parodies the Son. Here's another few ways. Number 1, he mimics rising from the dead. In Revelation 13:3 and 12, it says, one of its heads seemed to have a mortal wound, but its mortal wound was healed. And the whole earth marveled as they followed the beast. It exercises all authority of the first beast in its presence, and makes the earth and its inhabitants worship the first beast whose mortal wound was healed. This obviously is trying to parody the death and resurrection of Christ. Whether you believe that it was an actual death and resurrection, he faked it, or was nearly dead, the point is, the world perceives it as actually taking place. Number 2, he does miracles. I sometimes think that in modern Western Christianity, we commonly think that miracles can only be done by God and those who serve God. This is not the case at all. In fact, the Mosaic Law warns Israel about how false prophets will arise and do signs and miracles to try and persuade Israel to serve other gods. This is what the Antichrist will do. Revelation and 2 Thessalonians 2 are clear that the Antichrist will have the ability to do wonders and miracles because he is empowered by Satan. This, of course, is mimicking Jesus, who did a great number of miracles, including rising from the dead. The Antichrist will deceive the world so that they will worship the unholy Trinity. What about the false prophet, though? How does he parody the Holy Spirit as the anti-spirit? Well, primarily it's because he points people to the Antichrist. What is a role of the Holy Spirit in this world? One of them is to convict people to look unto Christ and the gospel for salvation and forgiveness. We can also describe that as the Spirit pointing people to worship Christ. This is what the false prophet does for the Antichrist. Let's read a few verses from Revelation 13. And by the signs that it is allowed to work in the presence of the beast, it deceives those who dwell on the earth, telling them to make an image for the beast that was wounded by the sword and yet lived. And it was allowed to give breath to the image of the beast, so that the image of the beast might even speak and might cause those who would not worship the image of the beast to be slain. Also it causes all, both small and great, both rich and poor, both free and slave, to be marked on the right hand or the forehead, so that no one can buy or sell unless he has the mark, that is, the name of the beast or the number of its name. This basically describes what I just argued. Everything he does is meant to point people to worship the beast and therefore worship the dragon. The Spirit does the same thing, but he does it so that people worship the true God. Therefore, the false prophet parodies the Holy Spirit. Another way he does this is how he points everyone, both great and small, rich and poor, male or female, whoever you are, to worship the beast. In the same way, Paul tells us in Galatians that the gospel is for everyone, not just a particular group of people. Number 2, he marks those of the Antichrist. This has two parodies within it that are essentially the same. The Holy Spirit marks believers. Ephesians 1:13-14, in him you also, when you heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, and believed in him, were sealed with the promised Holy Spirit, who is the guarantee of our inheritance until we acquire possession of it to the praise of his glory. And 4:30, and do not grieve the Holy Spirit of God, by whom you were sealed for the day of redemption. The sealing of the Holy Spirit seen here in Ephesians is just one evidence that we cannot lose our salvation. The Holy Spirit also seals 144,000 of Israel during the tribulation. Do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the servants of our God on their foreheads. And I heard the number of the sealed, 144,000, sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. Revelation 14 draws out this contrast immediately after we've just talked about the false prophet in Revelation 13. Then I looked, and behold, on Mount Zion stood the Lamb, and with him 144,000, who had his name and his father's name written on their foreheads. The false prophet will mimic this by giving the world the mark of the beast. Just as the sealing of the Spirit shows us the assurance of our salvation, the anti-spirit's mark shows them the assurance of their condemnation. Those who have the mark of the beast when Christ returns will be judged. If anyone worships the beast and its image and receives a mark on his forehead or on his hand, he will also drink the wine of God's wrath, poured in full strength into the cup of his anger, and he will be tormented with fire and sulfur in the presence of the holy angels and in the presence of the Lamb. And the smoke of their torment goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, these worshippers of the beast and its image, whoever receives the mark of its name. So this is the unholy trinity. They counterfeit God so that they are worshipped as if they are God. It is for this reason that they are also known as the counterfeit trinity. They all act as anti-God, which is why they are sometimes called the anti-trinity. They are clearly evil and unholy, which is why they are most commonly known as the unholy trinity. They parody God in whatever way necessary to deceive the world into worshiping them. Though the unholy trinity will not come until the 70th week of Daniel, the tribulation, and I argue that we were raptured prior to that, there's still a good lesson to be learned here. Satan still longs to be worshipped in our day, and does try and deceive the world into doing so. Some argue that Isaiah 14 describes Satan and Satan's heart. How you are fallen from heaven, O day star, son of dawn. How you are cut down to the ground, you who laid the nations low. You said in your heart, I will ascend to heaven, above the stars of God. I will set my throne on high. I will sit on the mount of assembly in the far reaches of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will make myself like the Most High. Satan wanted to be God and wanted to be worshipped as if he was God. That's why he rebelled, and that's why he fell. His desire is still the same today, and that is shown by how he acts in those final days. Be on guard for that, because we're in a spiritual warfare. I think that's all that I will say on the subject for now. Subscribe to the channel, give this video a like if you learned something, and I'd encourage you, check out another one of my videos. That's all for today, so until next time, remember to know the word, do the word, and share the word. But as always, we do it in love.